Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And hello, everyone. Good morning for me, anyway. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. I hope this finds you healthy, safe. Today is Saturday. I'm reminding myself, and so this will be our last conversation for the Satipatthana for a little while. But we'll get to a good moment here. And we'll probably get into, we'll see. We're going to talk about the 7 factors of enlightenment and the 4 truths. And the following chapter, if you will, is the assurance of attainment. So, we already understand all of this with our practice of Myoho Renge Kyo, but it is rather fascinating to see how arduous the teaching was early on, in the early years of Shakyamuni's sermons and teaching life, as we have here transcribed in one of several languages of translation, on the process of coming to that realization. Apologies. Health. It is the quintessential thing, isn't it? All right, let's get right into it. And further, monks, O monks, a monk lives contemplating mental object in the mental objects of the 7 factors of enlightenment. He's adopted this. He keeps building on his teachings. Now everything is a mental object of a mental object. He's constantly reinforcing this idea that we're of several minds, that we have an operating apparatus, and that it, in its way, has its own logistics that are karmic in nature, that the functionings of this apparatus is precipitated from a momentous and momentum and an inertia of vast amounts of energies at work with their own tendencies and conditions, and they represent this in one moment, and they carry on from moment to moment, but as they carry on, their influence, they degrade, they decay, right? Everything arises, endures, decays, and then dissolves. And the same is true with the minds. The mind that affects and is conjunctive with this momentum of energy, the mind that responds to and informs this apparatus, which is just barely conscious, what we think of as conscious. Then there's these consciousnesses where that exists, that shall we call it the basic function of mind, the samsaric mind, is to enforce, enliven, to direct, right? To direct. I want to walk over there. That's a very base function of mind, and it informs the body to walk over there, but it doesn't do a whole lot at a deeper sense to actually perform the functions of walking, right? Those are senses of touch, feel, balance, right? So on and so forth. That's ear. Got it? And then there's this mind that analyzes situations, that thinks about desires and how to manifest and accomplish those desires. And then there's the mind of manipulation that looks at that mind and has an opinion about that mind, the why all the time, right? But with all of that thinking and thoughts going on, what Shakyamuni is demonstrating is that those are very base. Those are just existence thoughts, existence mind. They're just rote. Keep this organism going, right? Keep the apparatus functioning. Eat now. You need fuel now. Sleep now. You need rest now. That kind of a mind is a samsaric mind. And that's what most people stop there. So we end up just being an organism. And from that, we derive this sense of I, self, being, because that's all we're about, being. But what's being demonstrated over and over and over again is these mental objects that we associate as an I, as a self, is itself a mental object. That there is a mind above that, over and around that. A mind that questions things of a life purpose, a direction, right? And ultimately, a mind even more distinct than that, that isn't so much worried, anxious, stressed about where am I going, what am I doing, but a mind that simply looks upon the whole thing as the process of life. This amazing mechanism that provides for this experience, unencumbered by emotions, feelings, stress, anxiety. That mind, the Buddha mind, relaxes the tremendous weight incurred by all the lower consciousnesses, which are all preoccupied with self-being, maintaining, right? That's the mind we want to experience this life with. We don't want to leave this life. We don't get rid of all the other consciousnesses, as we discussed in the video I referenced yesterday. Should put a link to that in the description. I'll try to remember to do that. We don't get rid of those other consciousnesses. We appreciate them, though, from an entirely different point of view. So we actually have all of those preoccupations with being, self, and I, and so forth, but we're unattached to that goal. We simply appreciate that that's the way that functions. And it provides for this clear-headed mind of experience, appreciation, compassion, awe. Follow? So from that observer mind, I keep calling it that, it's the best word I can come up with. From that observer mind, we can observe all of the lower minds, consciousnesses, as simply functioning, not stressed, not anxious, but accomplishing their tasks. How amazing. So we can perceive the mental objects of the mental objects And in that mind, there are no mental objects. We see the mental objects for what they truly are, this constant avarice for being. But we are not caught up in it. So he's established that rhetoric. And so he talks to the monks and he says, contemplating, thinking about, considering the mental object in the mental objects of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So how do I lead all these consciousnesses without stress, without anxiety, to maintain this unattached, unaffected, uninfluenced clarity, the beautiful vision of this experience? How do I inculcate that into my daily life? The Bodhisattva way. Because that is how I accomplish the goal of all of this. To live this life fully without the fetters, without the things that drag me down, that stress me out, that I get anxious about. They're all still there, but I experience them free of the anxiety. How do I cultivate that mind? How, bhikkhus or monks, do we live in this way? Contemplating the mental objects in the mental objects of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And you can replace the word contemplation with, loosely, with meditation, but it's more of a, how do I live my life so that all life is a meditation of sorts, right? But certainly when we hunker down and we try to really concentrate for insights on how to accomplish this bodhisattva life in the Buddha way, we need to be applying our thoughts to how to do this. Now, a reminder again, as Lotus Sutra Buddhists, we do this instantaneously. We don't need all these machinations, right? The only machination we need is Myoho Renge Kyo. And Nichiren provides us this mandala to give us a clear focal point of our doorway to Buddhahood. So we can instantiate immediately Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, our opening of the door of that mind of Buddha. But they didn't have that at this point. They were still intellectualizing. How do we do this? What is the nature of doing this? What is it? If they had Myoho Renge Kyo at that point, it would just seem like magic incantations. They wouldn't have understood what was being done in their mind by chanting, by having a mandala. Everything was more magical, mystical. And so by dissecting the method of realization, Shakyamuni was pushing them away from magical thinking and showing them, you can observe this. You can see this in your own mind. You can track it. This is actual function of consciousnesses. Here, O monks, when the enlightened factor of mindfulness is present, a monk knows with understanding, with insights, I have the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. I am being mindful. Or when the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is absent, he knows with understanding, I have not the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. I'm not being mindful right now. I can tell by my mood, how I feel, and my stress and my anxiety that I've forgotten to focus on this process, and I've gotten vacuumed into this possession, this I, this self, this ego. And I'm not being mindful right now. I've slipped out of mindfulness. You know when that happens. And he understands how the arising of the non-arising enlightenment factor of mindfulness comes to be, and how the completion by culture of the arisen enlightenment factor of mindfulness comes to be. When the enlightenment factor of investigation of mental objects is present, he knows with understanding, I have the enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental objects. When the enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental objects is absent, he knows with understanding, I have not the enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental objects, and he understands how the arising of the non-arising enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental objects comes to be, and how the completion of culture of the arisen enlightenment factor of investigation of mental object come to be. When the enlightenment factor of energy is present. Think of this. Think of this 3,000 years ago. This is what the Buddha is saying. When the enlightenment factor of energy is present, can we become enlightenment without energy? Can we have a Buddha mind without energy? You and I know this intrinsically now. We know that all life precipitates from potential, from energy. Put to task, energy, task, karma. Karma is just our container word for this process of energy coming in some form, manifesting, pushing, creating. It has tendencies. The moment energy is put to work, it has tendency and conditions, no matter how minute, and enough of those come together, and there becomes a trend of those tendencies and conditions, and they combine with other energies that have their own tendencies and conditions, and this myriad, uncountable, unfathomable play of all of these energies collecting to manifest this complex apparatus, no more or less complex than the entire universe, I remind you, with stars, planets, exoplanets, forces, right? When the enlightenment factor of energy is present, if there's no energy, then conversation over. He knows with understanding, I have the enlightenment factor of energy. We all do. And when the enlightenment factor of energy is absent, I have no energy. I don't want to move forward. I just want to die. There's still energy there. We fool ourselves a lot. He knows with understanding, I have not the enlightenment factor of energy. And that's more about how you're using the energy. Again, karma. And he understands how the arising of the non-arising enlightenment factor of energy comes to be, and how the completion by culture of the arisen enlightenment factor of energy comes to be. Because as we know, everything that manifests has a duration, a varied duration, and dissolves, goes away. Moment to moment, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. To be, to be, to be, to be, to be. So, when he says the arising of the non-arising enlightenment factor of energy, because we experience this moment to moment, this arising of energy, only to decay and begin again in the next, we understand that this isn't a permanent thing. You can't just get a scoop full of energy and stick it in you. You can draw from your life and alter, influence, amend the process that you're moment to moment experiencing of energy. But that's something you do with the Buddha mind. And you understand that once the energy is there, the arisen enlightenment factor of energy, how it comes to be, you need to take advantage of it. You need to be in it. You can't just compartmentalize and go, I have it, it's gone. By the time you're deciding it is you and you have it, it is no longer there. It is being replaced by the next moment. So if your influence of the process isn't enlightenment, then it is only decay and dissolution. So Buddha mind is something you have to constantly reinstantiate in each moment. That's what he's talking about. You don't just go, I'm Buddha now. Okay, now what are you? Now. Are you, human, bodhisattva, human, bodhisattva, human, Buddha, bodhisattva, human, right? Do you follow? This is a momentary, this is work, energy, work, karma. When the enlightenment factor of joy is present, he knows with understanding, I have enlightenment factor of joy. When the enlightenment factor of joy is absent, he knows with understanding, I have not the enlightenment factor of joy. And he understands how the rising and non-arising enlightenment factor of joy comes to be, and how the completion by culture of the arisen enlightenment factor of joy comes to be. What does that mean by culture? By our samsaric experience. Each of us is a culture of life, a culture of being, right? Now, this also reminds me of something a wise Buddhist once told me. I was asking a lot of questions about how much chanting is enough chanting. Those kinds of questions. Oh man, I chant for hours and still I'm in the shit. What the hell? Right? We get frustrated because we're like little babies. Gimme. I laugh at myself. And the simple advice he gave me, she gave me, I think it was a senior woman. She said, chant till you feel the joy. Oh, that's one of those guidances you just go, right. What the hell is that? Joy. But here it is. The enlightenment factor of joy. If every time you go to your Butsudan and you chant and you're miserable, you're not doing it right. I hear my own words and they make me laugh. Can you muster joy? If your lover left you and the rent's due and you lost your job and you're feeling like crap and you're going to the Butsudan and you got court appearance tomorrow. How in the hell do I feel joy? Well, what a wonderful challenge. Set it to task. Sit in front of your Butsudan, start chanting, and stare your mandala down, because it's your Gohonzon you're envisioning. And challenge your Gohonzon. I need to feel joy right now. Don't answer the court date. Don't answer the misery, the lover, the rent. Don't think about those things in front of your mandala. Your mandala is your opportunity to not think about those things. Think about the bliss of Buddha mind. How joyful that is. I guarantee you, you come out of 20 minutes of doing that in front of your, I mean, really doing that. It may take you a half hour to get there, but spend a good 20 minutes and this is the joy of Buddhahood mind. Everything will change. Because what is everything but your experience of it? So if you change your experience, you alter it to your joyful mind of Buddhahood, then none of that can touch you emotionally. And isn't that what we mean when we say it's all illusion anyway? You're torturing yourself. You are the torturer. So if you change your mind to joy, how can you be tortured? I mean, how many ways can we say this? Buddhahood is not some elusive, magical thing. It's here all along. It's our samsaric mind that keeps us hooked up to misery. It just makes me laugh. I have the enlightenment factor of calm. How calm is joy? How can you experience joy without calm? Right? There's all the crap of life. There's no calm in it. It's this constant churning. So calm, another enlightenment factor. Concentration. Keep your mind on the prize. That's what we're so thankful for Nichiren giving us a mandala. What an easy tool to help get our concentration focused. How in the hell did people do this before they had a mandala? I guess pictures of Shakyamuni, other objects they could try to sink their minds into. But the mandala, perfect. It's not a picture, it's a representation of the whole ball of teaching, the whole methodology. You can look around your mandala, you can try to intellectualize it, but why? You're just forcing your suffering. Just look at your mandala, demand to experience the joy of a freed mind, a Buddha mind. You have it. It's so simple. The enlightenment factor of concentration. What's the next one? Equanimity. The enlightenment factor of equanimity. I guarantee you, if you chant for joy, all of the calm, the equanimity, is that the last one? Yeah. All of these they'll just manifest. But we're still in the learning stages here, long before the Lotus Sutra, right? Thus he lives contemplating mental objects and the mental objects internally, externally, both internally, externally, the formations of the mental objects, the dissolution of the mental objects, over and over again, demonstrating all these different ways of considering what a life experience is and how it works. And guess where all of that gets us to? The Four Truths. Oh, there they are again. And further, O monks, a monk lives contemplating mental objects and the mental objects of the Four Truths. How, O monks, does a monk live contemplating the mental object in the mental objects of the Four Truths? Well, I'll tell you. Here, O monks, a monk understands. Your insights lead you to follow this process. This is suffering. This is dukkha. This is anxiety. This is stress. According to reality, he understands this is the origin of suffering. According to reality, he understands this is the cessation of suffering. According to reality, and he understands this is the road leading to the cessation of suffering according to reality. So everything he has taught you so far supports the Four Noble Truths. Knowing that these exercises of concentration, of enlightenment, of understanding are the very antidotes. Remember I said he's basically taking apart the Eightfold Noble Path? And how do we gain enlightenment through the Eightfold Noble Path? Once we know the Four Noble Truths, all life is dukkha. To be happy, we need to cease the formations that lead us to dukkha. How do we cease dukkha? Through the Eightfold Noble Path. Well, now he's been talking about right thinking, right mind, right intent, all of the Eightfold Noble Path, right? Thus he lives contemplating mental objects in the mental objects internally, or he lives contemplating mental objects in mental objects externally, or he lives internally, externally. He lives contemplating origination things in mental objects, or he lives contemplating dissolution things in mental objects, or he lives contemplating origination and dissolution things, right? The whole repetition. His mindfulness is established with the thought mental objects exist, right? Samsara's here. To the extent necessary, though, this whole play, this whole samsaric existence, to be, me, exists to the extent, in other words, for the only reason of just for knowledge, to perceive it, and remembrance. How I got here, how all of it got here, how all life does this process. And he lives independent because this process, as wonderful as it is, and as intimately as I experience it, is just a process. And I can simply observe it for the wonder that it is without being sucked into it, although it provides for my insight to see it. That's the joy of it. And clings not in this world, or to not in this world, which is an interesting way to say that your Buddha mind existence isn't tethered to the fetters, words we don't use much anymore, but very applicable here. Thus, indeed, O monks, a monk lives contemplating mental object in the mental objects of the Four Noble Truths. So we've come full circle. It's kind of like, now you know what I mean when I say the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. This kind of dissection you must understand in order to truly flush it out, let it go. Assurance of attainment. We've got a little time. Let's get into it. It's only one page. O monks, should any person maintain the four arousings of mindfulness in this manner for 7 years, then by him one of the two fruitions is proper to be expected. If you really focus your energy, right? One of the factors of enlightenment, focus your effort, your energy on clearly understanding all of these processes that are leading to your attachments, and in fact unattach, realize that mind that is already there but that you're not looking through because you're so enamored with the misery of samsara, dukkha. You don't need to be, but by dissecting it every day for 7 years, by then you should expect one of two things: knowledge, arhantship, here and now. You should understand, therefore, how you as an individual no longer be plagued by samsaric consciousnesses. That doesn't mean letting them go. That means that you don't experience them as plague. You experience them as the very fodder on which you build your enlightenment, your release, your Buddhahood. Or, if some form of clinging is yet present, if you haven't fully released yourself, the state of non-returning, the third state of the supramundane fulfillment. So, that is an obtuse reference to what one might call the Bodhisattva. No, I'm not going to call it that. So arhatship is this mental development, this mind of release for oneself. But if you still cling to, let's say, your appearance, so I'm fully enlightenment and I need people to see it, right? So you still have vestiges of your samsaric ego. Whatever it is. I just picked on appearance. It could be anything. Maybe you just can't stop having sex. Whatever. Then what he's saying is that you can't, if you've achieved that much, and you still have some things to work on, the word you often see in print is regression. It will be extremely difficult for you to regress. I mean, you know so much now that even if you act stupid, you know you're acting stupid. You know better, is what we would say, right? Once you know something deeply, it's always takes even more effort to go backwards. It can be done, but even if you go backwards, you know you've gone backwards, and you know while you're being back there that you know better. You can never lose that knowledge, is what he's saying. But this is still, remember early teachings, this is still where to achieve the level of an arhat is tremendously laudable. If you can just understand how to release your own existence from the samsaric dukkha, stress, anxiety, suffering, pain, all that, and still live in this life, you're not a bodhisattva, but you have learned what enlightenment is about, what it's like. But if that's where you stop, I'm sorry to tell you, an arhat is a very selfish thing. So there's a kind of a provision here. You'll learn one of two things. You'll learn that you're enlightened, but you also will learn that there's still something remaining. You can't backslide, non-regression, but you can, but not without knowing it. But you've only achieved it for yourself, so you haven't really really achieved full enlightenment because you haven't developed yet your deep compassion to lead others down this path. That's missing. So it's a very kind of an egocentric enlightenment, a vestige of ego, self, even though you feel unaffected by it, you're still maintaining it. So you haven't fully realized enlightenment, which was the stated goal in the first place, remember? The enlightenment of all sentient and insentient beings. So if you've reached an enlightenment stage, a consciousness stage of knowing enlightenment, well, that's tremendous. But if you're not actively encouraging others to do as you have done, you haven't reached complete, perfect enlightenment, right? So let's move on. O monks, let alone 7 years should a person maintain these 4 arousings of mindfulness in this manner for the 6 years, or 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, then by him one of the 2 fruitions is proper to be expected, knowledge here and now, or if for some form of clinging is yet present, the state of non-returning. O monks, let alone a year should any person maintain these 4 arousings of mindfulness in the manner for 7 months, then by him one or of 2 fruitions is proper to be expected, knowledge here and now, or if for some form of clinging is yet present, the state of non-returning. O monks, let alone 7 months should any person maintain these 4 arousings of mindfulness in this manner for 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, half a month, then by him one of the 2 fruitions is proper to be expected, knowledge here and now, if for some form of clinging is yet present, the state of non-returning. O monks, let alone half a month should any person maintain these 4 arousings of mindfulness in this manner for a week, then by him one of 2 fruitions is proper to be expected, knowledge here and now, or if for some form of clinging is still present, the state of non-returning. Because of this was it said, this is the only way, O monks, for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the destruction of suffering and grief, for reaching the right path, for the attainment of nirvana, namely the 4 arousings of mindfulness. Thus spoke the Tathagata, satisfied. The monks approved of his words. So, okay. Now the commentary on the discourse on the arousing of mindfulness with marginal notes. This is a section synopsis. I'll have to look into the nature of that. Yeah. Wow, it's interesting. So, it's interesting study. It's fascinating to me that the more you study, whether it's early teachings or later teachings, one of the main characteristics of the early teachings is simply getting people to the level of understanding where they can change their own experience of life. And if you want to cultivate students to become teachers of the way to understand the process of life and their own minds, you need to first create students who will understand that very thing. They can't very well teach others until they themselves can come to terms with this samsaric existence, right? And once that happens, once he gets to a point in the teachings where he has enough students who seem to have accomplished this knowledge, this day-to-day knowledge, right? Then we can proceed to, with that knowledge, work on how this interacts with others, Because if we're going to teach others, not only do we need to teach them what we've learned, but we need to teach them in their experience what we've learned. And that is really tricky, as anyone who's had any relationship with anyone in life, including siblings, parents, sons, daughters, so on. It's not easy to communicate, to share ideas, to bust through the illusions of opinions and different ways of understanding the same world. It is difficult. So there has to be this whole program of, now you understand the goal. How do you get somebody else with all this new information coming at you that you've never had to consider, because it's going to shake up your own understanding of your achievement? So now you have to wrestle all over again with your own achievement of enlightenment in a way that you understand it well enough to inspire somebody else to do it for themselves. Because they're not going to reach your enlightenment, they're going to reach theirs. Everyone has their own path. This is why the Bodhisattva practice is so gargantuan as far as the experience of Buddha. Because Buddha isn't limited to each person. Each person has their own way, their own path to arrive. And this is why only could be understood between Buddhas. It's not because there are different Buddhas. It's because of the myriad, unfathomably great number of paths to Buddha. Different for each and every one of us. That kind of understanding of enlightenment is far beyond Arhat. And this is the goal, as we'll see, of Mahayana. Ultimately, once enough are trained in that aspect of Buddha's practice, ultimately we arrive at the Lotus Sutra. Okay, now that you know all this, now that you've achieved all this, just do this. Because just doing this contains all of that. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Isn't that amazing? Chant for the joy of Buddha mind. Just chant for that. If you need an objective to your chanting, chant for that. That idea will fall away as you penetrate your mandala and your Gohonzon, your Buddha mind. But it's fine if you need an inspiring thought to get you there, to raise your head above the mire of all of the stress and anxiety, right? The calm, the joy, the equanimity, all of it. It's already there. What are you waiting for? Call now. Operators are standing by. All right. Enjoy your practice, please. And take care of your health. Be kind to yourself and others. And I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're doing Gangyo. And we're going to start, I think we're going to start the middle way. If you have an opinion either way on that, that's what the comments are for. Let me know. Be well. Bye for now.